there, team. Welcome back. Peggy and I are hanging out on a snowy afternoon, and we are continuing the school ugliness series. um, the first, are you done with this, Pegs? Excuse him. He was more into the snuggling than the talking. So in this series, we're talking about some very sad things that are occurring in schools. And in the first video, we talked about bullying, and we're going to continue that conversation today. But in the first video, we talked about ways to empower your children to know what's going on with them internally, to protect against the power grab that can often result in becoming a bully. And today we're going to focus on, or in this video, we're going to focus on instead what families can do to help children who are feeling themselves to be the victim of bullying. So many different types of people can become victims of bullying and be placed in that role, whether it's physical bullying or cyberbullying. But one incredible resource for anybody targeted in that way is an abundant amount of self-knowledge and a comfortability, if that, I think that's a word, within your own skin. Because generally we're vulnerable to what we already believe to be true. So if somebody tells us we're dumb, and we know that's not true, that's not even a thought that's entered our mind, we believe very strongly in our intelligence, that without question, like, no, I just know that I'm an intelligent person, then somebody saying that we're dumb doesn't really bother us, because it just kind of falls off like, I'm not dumb. That's a dumb thing for you to say. But if we already have a sense that maybe we're not very smart, that doubt goes from being a little spark to just a blazing fire. And so oftentimes it seems as though what perpetrators of bullying do is kind of intuitively find that weak spot, those areas where we generally feel less secure in ourselves, and take advantage of that. So obviously, I encourage you to be talking to your children and listening to your children every day, listening for what they say in between what they don't say. So as you're learning about their day, listening for maybe the things that they're not saying, but you can tell that something is off. And so if somebody says something that sticks with them, it would be good to ask, well, why? Why does that bother you? Do you think that's true about yourself? So I was having a conversation with one of my students, and this was a few years back, but still working with first graders. And there was a student, one of my young ladies, who was very upset because she had somebody telling her that she was mean, and which is ironic, I know, but just repeatedly, like it wasn't quite bullying behavior. She was just picking on her each day, and it wasn't meant to tear her down. She just wasn't very skillful at communicating. And so this other young lady was very upset about being called mean. And so the first thing we did when we got together is I asked the girl who was the victim of the mean behavior, do you think that you're a mean person? And she kind of stopped and looked at me and said, well, I don't know. She said that I'm a mean person. And that was a really good opportunity to do some teaching and some self-concept building. So what does it mean to be a mean person? Well, it's somebody that blah, blah, blah. And she listed off some things, and I said, so is that who you are? Well, no. Well, what sort of things do you do? And she listed off some of the kind things she does with her friends. And so we talked about, long story short, help to develop this sense of, no, I'm actually a kind person. Sometimes I will do mean things, and I can take responsibility for those. So that's the first step, is really helping your children co-create with you a positive self-concept based in truth. If you have a child that's consistently mean, that's a different problem, right? So this isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about, oh, you're great at everything all the time. It's about truth, you know? This girl is not a mean person. The person who told her you are mean was wrong. She might have been acting mean in a certain situation that one time, but she's not mean. And it's important for her to know that. Then we practiced by acting out back and forth what sort of words she could use to stand up for herself in a kind way. And so we talked about using language like curiosity language. So, I don't understand why you're saying that. Why are you saying that I mean? Immediately, that's disarming for somebody that's just used to spitting out something and not having any response. So once the bully wasn't a bully in this case, was faced with a question, she was able to answer, well, you're mean because blah blah blah. And then the first grade girl who's working on the self-image, she was able to say, oh, I can understand why that would hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that I was acting mean in that situation. I'm actually a kind person. Can I show you that? So we practice this a lot. Because this isn't something that a first grader is going to just do. It has to be taught. Some kids naturally come to social situations, even at 5, 6, and 7, and they can navigate them. I've heard a few students have the vocabulary and the cognitive ability to engage in that way. But most kids, they need us to explicitly teach them, this is who you are based on what I'm seeing, mirroring that back. And this is how you talk to people. And this is how you advocate for yourself. And so those are all important and key pieces of helping your children if they're in a situation where somebody's being unkind to them or somebody's bullying them. One of the things I think it's most important to encourage our children is to act from a place of strength, not weakness. So when you're put in that victim role, it feels very defeating and very disempowering. And sometimes I feel like as adults, we accidentally reinforce that by using a lot of victim language instead of helping empower those students. Because again, like when we were talking about with the being a bully, there's an imbalance of power happening. That bully is trying to get power from this other person because of his or her own issues that they're dealing with. And in order to solve that problem, the person being bullied needs to be able to kind of balance that out and demonstrate, I'm actually not going to sit here and take this. I don't understand what you're doing. And that can happen in really simple ways, by using humor, by coming from a place of curiosity, like we talked about. But going back to my statement about how as adults, sometimes we can inadvertently make the situation worse, is sometimes because we feel, oh, this person is being unkind and oh, how awful. That is how we react in a very big way. Oh, poor thing, which is very disempowering. And we think, oh, we're being compassionate. But again, not so much. A few years back, there was a parenting movement that started that I just kind of stuck with me. I was kind of into it. As somebody that's dealt with anxiety my whole life, much better now. It was horrible when I was a kid. It really stuck with me. And I started to notice parents who, when their child would fall or slip or something, the natural reaction is, Instead, they would stop themselves from reacting that way, in that big, scary way. And they would intentionally, which is very hard to do. I really admire the parents who could do this. And they kept their body calm and, you're okay. And what they were modeling is calm. So for their children, they showed, yep, you fell, but it's not really a big deal. You can get up, you can feel calm. This is not something you have to be afraid of. And I think the same principle can be applied to bullying. You know, if somebody comes home, your baby comes home and says, "Oh, so and so said this mean thing." It's, "Oh, that was terrible. Oh my gosh, you poor thing." And what about just well, that's ridiculous. You know that you're an incredibly smart person. What did you say to such a ridiculous comment? So it's just, in responding like that, instead, you're communicating a very powerful message about who your child is. You're throwing off that insult like it's a tiny thing that's just a pebble under their boot and they can smash it, because they are intelligent, they are competent, they are powerful, and they don't need to take that crap from anyone. And so I think if we can, as adults, maybe be conscious of building up that strength in our children, I think that it will serve them well. Thank you for watching the second episode in our School Ugliness series. I don't know, that was quite an interesting title. It just kind of came to me and I'm just going with it. So the next video, we're going to get into a little more serious. Now, the bullying has been devastating. It's caused all sorts of horrendous things, and so it's not that it's not serious, but we're going to move on to physical violence and aggression in schools and what families might be able to do to help mitigate some of these very serious occurrences. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.